Hi, this is Heidi and Rod from Garden Crossings, and today we are out in our landscape and we're going to be trimming our Bobo hydrangeas. So many of you have commented through all the videos that we do throughout the summer and stuff on just how huge our Bobos are. And we totally agree with you, they are huge. They're probably 4, maybe 5 foot tall, and in reality they're only supposed to get to be about 3, maybe 4 foot tall. So we're going to do some pretty aggressive trimming on these today. And I'm going to have Rod kind of explain to you a little bit of what he's going to do.
So as Heidi said, you can see this hydrangea. I mean, it's approaching 5.5 feet tall, this Bobo. And we have pruned it about 1/3 of the way for the last couple years. I'm going to go at least half. We've also had some sort of little insect on it in the spring months that actually kind of make a browning part of the leaf, and it seems to actually even delay the flowering on it a little bit. The little beetle is supposed to overwinter on the bark of the hydrangea, so by cutting it down further, hopefully I'm eliminating that issue for next spring. But yeah, I'm just going to get in there and I'm going to trim it about halfway, and we're going to go from there. Now, if you have underground sprinkling, you're going to see your hydrangea flowers. If your underground sprinkling hits it, they're going to grow brown faster. Whereas if Heidi ever takes she takes pictures or video of the stuff, the hydrangeas out in the parking lot at the greenhouse, where the underground sprinkling doesn't hit the flower, you'll see it's more the reddish color, like maybe some of these top ones where the sprinklers don't hit as much. So Heidi's chosen not to use Bobo as the porch pots, but we'll just start trimming this up and show you what we're gonna do.
So Rod's getting in there, digging in there to get this thing trimmed back. Like he mentioned, there's been this little bug that's been, for probably the past 2 or 3 years now, getting on these plants. It's like a little beetle or a weevil of sorts, and it's turning the leaves ugly. And like you said, it was delaying the blooms on this plant. So hopefully we're getting rid of it a little bit by doing this big trim on the plant. Also, he had mentioned to you that we're not saving any of these particular blooms for the winter porch pots. I just have found in the past that the Bobo hydrangea flowers, because the flowers are a little bit smaller, or the florets, I guess, are a little bit smaller than what limelight or firelight are, they just don't seem to dry as nice. And since I have like a lot of selection here in the yard to choose from of the hydrangeas that will be better, I'm just going to use the better ones. If Bobo is the only one you have in your yard, use it. I mean, heaven's sakes, if you've got something, use it. But for me, I have other options that work a little bit better. So that's why we're choosing not to save these Bobo hydrangeas for dried flowers. So what he's doing right now is there's a bunch of like dead branches or just kind of like random little branches there at the bottom. He's trimming those nice and tight. That's also going to help shape the plant a little bit so it's not touching the ground as much. So a pretty aggressive trim. Actually, from what I'm seeing from my angle, he's trimming about 2/3 off of this plant, leaving 1/3 behind. So like firelight, recommendation is usually to wait until these plants are fully dormant in the fall before trimming. That way they don't put on any additional growth if you get a little warm spell. But for us today, we had time to do it and wanted to get out here and tackle this project. And this way too, we had time to video it and just show you what we're doing. If you've watched any of the summer videos that we've done, I keep mentioning over and over again how these Bobos are just too tall and how we're gonna get in here and hack them back. So here I wanted to show you us actually doing what I've been talking about, and that's hacking them back. Bobo hydrangea is a panicle or a hardy hydrangea. This is one of those that blooms off of the new season's growth. So they can be trimmed in the fall or in the spring, and you're not worrying about sacrificing any blooms. The blooms do come off of the new growth, so trimming can really be done at any time. Now obviously if you've got buds starting and it's summertime, you probably don't want to trim it then, because then he'll be trimming off any of your buds that you're seeing. So in the spring, you want to trim it before it really starts to flush out with its new growth. So this is going to be one of those really fun ones to see next year, just how they do. Sometimes you have to sacrifice. I don't know, have you ever said to yourself, you know, like, oh, this shrub is just too big, it's getting ugly. We say that a lot. And before, like 10 years ago or so, we didn't dare trim plants back like this. And then we were talking to the folks at Spring Meadow Nursery, who is the home of the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs, and they said just trim them back. You know, if the plant's ugly, trim it. So we took their advice and have been doing that ever since. And honestly, we've had no regrets, and we've had no issues either. To be honest, there's no plants that we've trimmed back hard and have regretted doing or have lost. Now, this might not be the same situation for you, but we've done it and haven't had any regrets in trimming things back pretty aggressively. So this Craftsman tool that he's got is just chomping through those sticks like no problem. And there's some pretty good sized branches there, like 1/2 inch or so. So it's doing a nice job. So there you can see what's left. And here's what I get to pick up here in a minute to throw in the trailer. So there's a lot of like just little thin little twiggies, and you're trimming out a lot of those thin twigs, aren't you, Rod?
I am.
Yeah, so he's trimming out a lot of the thin twigs, leaving back the more substantial, thicker branches. Those thin twigs they won't hold the weight of the plants anyways. So, and that's a good way too in pruning things out. Get rid of all those like thin branches and leave the bigger, more substantial plant behind. So I would say at its tallest point, it might be pushing 2.5 foot off the ground. So that's quite a dramatic trim. And to be honest, I'm so excited to see what these are going to look like next year. So I think, like I was saying earlier, if you are new to the station, I would encourage you to check some of our summer garden tours here of both our home landscape and at the greenhouse. And then that way you can see what these hydrangeas look like in their prime. Every month I get out in the garden and do a video so you can see the transition from month to month as to when they're putting on their flowers and as to when the flowers start coloring up. So it's pretty interesting to see how they go. We are zone 5B, 6A here in our garden. And I know a lot of people will say that they don't get the pretty fall color on their panicle hydrangeas like we do here in Michigan. And I think that's because we have the cooler nights, and that's why we're getting the better transformation of color here in our garden. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get this pile picked up. Actually, no, you know what? We're going to tackle the other Bobo before we pick this pile up.
You want to just show them the difference?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I'm going to show you the difference here. So here is, well, let's just go. Here is what it was. And here is what it is now. Hey, Rod, can you stand next to that hydrangea so we can just do like a height comparison a second? So get into that one a little bit. Okay, so that one, Rod's 5'10". So this is probably, well, yeah, raising it up, probably about 5.5 foot tall. So he's trimmed this one here down, and standing like right next to it is just above his knees. So yeah, pretty much cut it right in half. All right, we're gonna pick up this mess. We're gonna get digging into the next one over here, and stay tuned because there's more coming. So here we have it. Bobo's been trimmed. The other Bobo trimmed. So nice. That's going to look a whole lot different next year, I think. We're gonna leave that butterfly bush rod that way for the winter. Hopefully it'll grow back quicker this next year. All right, on to the next one.